The Galactic Council Hall had never been this silent. Representatives from 1,000 species sat in the vast chamber, their bioluminescent displays, chitinous mandibles, and twitching appendages all frozen in anticipation. A single species stood at the center of it all, the humans. Ambassador Elias Carter adjusted his tie, an outdated relic of Earth's formal diplomacy. The fabric seemed almost primitive amidst the gleaming, hyper-advanced fashion of the council delegates, but it carried a weight far greater than its material suggested. He looked directly at the towering holographic projection of Supreme Arbiter Zyroth, the six-eyed, many-limbed ruler of the council, and spoke. "Our answer is no." A murmur rippled through the chamber. No species had ever outright refused a proposal from the Galactic Council. Not like this. Not with such finality. The Zelvari delegation let out a series of clicks, translating to barely restrained outrage. The Drenari, towering reptilian warriors known for their cold pragmatism, merely exchanged glances, already recalculating strategies. The Andari, a species of amorphous telepathic beings, flickered with confusion and agitation. Zyroth's massive form leaned forward, the glow of his cybernetic implants intensifying. "Ambassador Carter," he said, voice echoing across the chamber, "you do not seem to understand. This is not a request. This is a demand. If your species refuses to join the council, we cannot guarantee your safety in this galaxy." Carter smirked. "Then it seems we'll just have to guarantee our own." The council chamber exploded into chaos. The breaking point. The council had spent centuries expanding its influence, offering diplomacy to lesser species and bringing them under its fold. Many had resisted, at first. But after economic blockades, military pressures, and well-placed subterfuge, they all fell in line. But humans? Humans were different. They weren't just rejecting the offer. They were laughing at it. The news spread like wildfire. Every galactic network, every interstellar news relay, and every intelligence agency dissected every word of the humans' response. The consequences were immediate. The galactic markets trembled. Humanity's trade networks, though young, were growing at an exponential rate, fueled by an almost pathological obsession with innovation. Their military, though numerically insignificant compared to the Council's armadas, was an enigma. Their warships didn't follow conventional designs. Their strategies were unpredictable. They didn't just fight wars, they rewrote them. And worst of all, they had refused the Council's hand not because they feared it, but because they didn't. Zyroth slammed a limb against the command interface before him, silencing the arguing delegates. "Enough," he roared. "If humans will not bend, they will break. Deploy the fleets." The order had been given. Humanity had sealed its fate. Or so the Council thought. The first strike. Within days, the Council fleets mobilized. Thousands of warships darkened the void, converging on Sol system with the efficiency of a machine designed for conquest. The strategy was simple: overwhelm, suppress, and occupy. Humanity, for all its stubbornness, was still a fledgling species in the grand scope of galactic warfare. Or so they assumed. The first fleet arrived at the outskirts of Sol, just past Pluto's orbit. It consisted of 3 battle cruisers, 12 destroyers, and nearly 200 fighter-class vessels. More than enough to subdue an isolated system. They never sent a second transmission. Within minutes, every ship vanished from Council scanners. No explosions. No distress calls. No wreckage. Just gone. At first, the Council blamed a malfunction. Then sabotage. But as hours passed, panic set in. Then came the message. A single transmission, sent from an unknown human source, broadcasted to every Council system simultaneously. "Your fleets are gone. The war has begun. See you soon." The fires of war ignite. Panic set in. The Council had fought hundreds of wars, but never had an enemy responded with such surgical precision. Human fleets didn't just engage, they hunted. They turned war into an art form, slipping past defenses, striking at weak points, and disappearing before retaliation could even begin. Council admirals found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to fight by their rules. Their war doctrines, meticulously crafted over millennia, crumbled under the weight of human unpredictability. Then came the worst realization of all. The Council hadn't just underestimated humanity's military. They had underestimated humanity itself. For when faced with existential threats, when backed into a corner, humans did what no other species dared to do. They escalated. And as the first human war fleets entered Council space, bringing with them weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, one truth became terrifyingly clear. This war would not be one of conquest. This would be a war of extinction. To be continued? Humanity rejected the Council's diplomacy, and now the galaxy was burning for it. But this was just the beginning. As human war fleets pushed deeper into enemy space, the Council's carefully crafted empire teetered on the edge of annihilation. Who would survive? And more importantly, who would beg for humanity's mercy? The war had begun, but the Council still did not understand what they were dealing with. Humanity had not merely refused diplomacy. They had turned it into a mockery, laughing as they dismantled the very foundations of the Council's power. The fleets sent to subdue them? Gone. The admirals who had spoken confidently of human inferiority? Silent. The Council's intelligence divisions? Scrambling for answers that no longer existed. Supreme Arbiter Xyroth sat in the Grand War Chamber, his massive form hunched over a holographic star map. The borders of the Council flickered with red, human strikes appearing and disappearing faster than their fleet commanders could react. Reports from the front lines were filled with impossible data. Entire armadas lost without a single shot fired in return. Supply depots obliterated in precise, calculated attacks. And worst of all, civilian networks flooded with intercepted human broadcasts. They thought they could subjugate us. They thought they were safe. Now they will learn what fear truly means. The transmissions spread like a virus, infecting not just the Council's communications but their minds. Panic was setting in, not just among the military, but among the civilians who had never before imagined that the Great Council could lose. Xyroth turned to his advisors, his 6 eyes narrowing. We need a decisive response. Now. The chamber was silent. Even the most battle-hardened strategists had nothing to offer. Because nothing they had ever known had prepared them for this. The human war doctrine. The Council had always fought predictable wars. Their fleets relied on overwhelming numbers, slow but methodical advances, and inevitable dominance through attrition. Their enemies had always fallen in line eventually, whether through military force, economic strangulation, or political maneuvering. Humanity shattered all of those expectations. They fought like predators, not like soldiers. Their ships didn't move in rigid formations, but in chaotic, unpredictable patterns, striking and vanishing before retaliation could be coordinated. Their weapons were not designed for prolonged engagements, but for annihilation, hyperkinetic railguns capable of punching through dreadnought armor like paper, stealth systems that made entire battle groups disappear, and AI-driven electronic warfare that turned the Council's own communications against them. But the most terrifying thing? Humans did not fight for territory. They fought for vengeance. Every intercepted human broadcast carried a clear and chilling message. You tried to make us kneel. Now we will burn your empire to the ground. The slaughter at Kelavar Prime. Kelavar Prime was supposed to be the impenetrable fortress of the Council. A massive military stronghold surrounded by shipyards, planetary defenses, and a fleet of over 5,000 warships. It was the heart of Council logistics, the very backbone of their power. The humans took it in 3 days. No one even saw them arrive. On the first day, half of the orbital defenses mysteriously shut down, their automated systems hijacked by an unknown force. The fleet commanders scrambled, issuing frantic commands to restore functionality, only to find their own security clearances locked out of their ships. On the second day, Kelavar's atmosphere began to boil. The Council military believed it to be an attack, deploying entire legions to the planetary surface in preparation for an invasion. But no troops landed. No orbital bombardments followed. Instead, the humans simply left. The commanders on Kelavar breathed a sigh of relief. Perhaps the humans had underestimated their defenses. Perhaps they had retreated. Then came the third day. Every Council ship stationed at Kelavar Prime was suddenly overridden, their reactors overloading in perfect synchronization. The skies above the planet turned into a blinding inferno as 5,000 warships detonated at once. The planetary defense grid, weakened by the loss of its fleet, fell silent. And then, only then, did the humans return. Thousands of drop pods rained from the sky. By the time the Council regained control of their communications, the last transmission from Kelavar Prime was already spreading across the galaxy. A lone Council officer, her voice trembling, whispering 4 words before the transmission cut to static. The humans are here. The Council's last gamble. The war was no longer about reclaiming control. It was about survival. Xyroth called an emergency meeting of the highest-ranking officials in the Council. Representatives from every major species sat in stunned silence, watching the battle reports flood across the galactic map. Systems falling one by one. The humans weren't conquering, they were purging. They had been given an ultimatum. They had been told to kneel. Instead, they were erasing the Galactic Council. "We must negotiate," said High Chancellor Vrakis of the Drenari, his reptilian eyes flickering with something the Drenari had never known before: fear. "They will not stop unless we give them reason to." "Negotiate," barked Supreme Arbiter Zyroth. "We tried diplomacy. They spat in our faces. What makes you think they will accept surrender?" Vrakis' voice was grim. "Because if they don't, we are all dead." Silence fell. For the first time in galactic history, the rulers of the most powerful empire the universe had ever known felt the one thing they had never thought possible: helplessness. Because humanity had decided that the war was not over until the Council was. And the death toll had only just begun. The Galactic Council was crumbling. Entire sectors were going dark, their fleets vanishing into the abyss without a trace. The great industrial worlds that had once fed the Council's endless war machine lay in ruins, their planetary foundries reduced to molten slag. And the humans still weren't stopping. This wasn't just war anymore. This was eradication. The Council had subjugated hundreds of species throughout its history. They had forced compliance through terror, economics, and overwhelming military might. But nothing, not in their worst nightmares, had prepared them for what happened when a species refused to submit. Humanity did not want peace. They wanted revenge. The fall of the Zelther Dominion. The Zelther were one of the Council's most powerful members, their vast fleets once considered unbeatable. Their home system, Zelther Prime, was a fortress world, surrounded by planetary shields, orbital weapons platforms, and enough firepower to hold off an entire invasion fleet. The humans took it in one night. There were no grand battles, no massive fleet engagements. No human warships were even detected entering the system. Yet, by dawn, Zelther Prime was a graveyard. The first sign of the attack came when every defense platform simultaneously shut down. The planetary shields collapsed, their energy cores overloading without explanation. Then the world itself went silent. Every city, every government facility, every military outpost, empty. Not a single Zelthari remained. No bodies, no debris, nothing. As if they had simply disappeared. The few surviving Council vessels that arrived days later found only a single message, burned into the planet's surface in letters large enough to be seen from orbit. "One less tyrant in the galaxy." The humans had not just one. They had erased an entire civilization from existence. The Council's final attempt at peace. Panic spread across the Council's remaining worlds. Leaders who had once spoken with arrogance now whispered in hushed tones, their voices laced with dread. The Council had ruled the galaxy for millennia, but now they were the ones being hunted. Desperation forced their hand. A summit was called, the most secretive in Council history. Every remaining leader gathered in a hidden starbase deep in uncharted space, beyond the reach of war, beyond the reach of human vengeance. The decision was unanimous. They would beg. Not for a ceasefire. Not for a treaty. For mercy. The human response. The Council's final message to humanity was broadcast across every remaining system. "We acknowledge our mistakes. We were wrong to attempt to subjugate you. We ask for peace, for an end to the bloodshed. What do you demand?" For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then the response came. A single transmission originating from deep within the Sol system. A lone human figure stood before the camera, faceless, nameless, their voice cold and emotionless. "You ask what we demand? We demand justice. And justice has only one outcome. Your empire dies today." Then, every remaining Council-controlled world went dark. The end begins. The humans had unleashed something far worse than war. They had perfected annihilation. Entire fleets vanished. Planets erased. Every infrastructure, every line of communication, every last remnant of the Council's once great empire, systematically dismantled. The last strongholds of the Council, the hidden worlds where the remaining rulers had fled, fell one by one. Until nothing remained. No surrender. No survivors. No second chances. The Galactic Council, the most powerful force the universe had ever known, was gone. Wiped from existence. Humanity had done what no species had ever dared to do. They had taken a galactic empire and made it history. And the universe would never forget. The Galactic Council was gone. Their fleets, burned from the stars. Their rulers, erased from history. Their legacy, nothing more than dust drifting through cold, empty space. Humanity had won. But victory had a cost. And now the universe braced for what would come next. The silence that followed. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was without an empire. Trade routes lay in ruins. Hyperlanes once patrolled by Council warships were now graveyards of wreckage. Planets that had relied on centralized governance suddenly found themselves leaderless, vulnerable, and terrified. Without the Council's iron grip, chaos took hold. Some species collapsed into anarchy, their worlds consumed by civil war. Others turned to the humans, begging for guidance, for leadership, for anything that would prevent them from suffering the same fate as the Council. But humanity was silent. They had not conquered. They had cleansed. And now they watched. The last broadcast. The remnants of the galaxy's elite gathered on a distant moon, desperate to understand what humanity wanted. They had feared annihilation, but weeks had passed and no human fleets came for them. No demands, no ultimatums. Then the final transmission arrived. A simple message broadcast across every known world. A lone figure stood against a backdrop of stars. Their voice was calm, devoid of emotion. You feared us. You sought to chain us. You sought to rule us. And now you understand. The image shifted, showing the shattered husk of the Galactic Council's once mighty capital world, its surface turned to glass. We are not conquerors. We are not rulers. We are the reminder. A reminder that the strong do not rule the weak. A reminder that tyranny ends in fire. A reminder that those who seek to control others will one day face something they cannot control. The transmission ended. And humanity vanished from galactic affairs. The legacy of fire. Without humanity's presence, the galaxy was left to its own devices. Some species rose, seizing the opportunity to forge their own empires. Others banded together, forming fragile alliances to ensure their survival. But no one dared repeat the Council's mistakes. Because everyone knew, if humanity returned, it would not be as liberators. It would be as executioners. And so, in the shadow of Earth's wrath, a new order emerged. Not built on conquest. Not built on domination. But built on fear. The fear that somewhere, in the cold void of space, humanity was still watching. Waiting. Deciding. And if the galaxy ever forgot the lesson they had taught, then humanity would remind them. That. Or the beginning. The Council is gone. The galaxy is free. But is it truly better? Or have the humans simply replaced one fear with another? Let me know in the comments what you think. Should humanity step in and lead? Or should they let the galaxy burn itself out? Subscribe now because this story isn't over yet.